Hey, good morning. I don't normally do this, but I was sitting here thinking, and I wanted to share, I wanted to ask people some questions that I oftentimes ask myself. But I wanted to start it by saying I am extremely thankful every single day that I'm allowed to open my eyes and see another morning. Because in my mind, when I'm allowed to do that, I figure I can make the rest of the day happen. When I'm giving that opportunity that I didn't think I would always have, I am extremely thankful. I try my best to never take anything for granted because you see, for 23 years of my life, I spent it away. I spent it away from my family, my loved ones, people who cared about me, my children, my grandchildren. And I didn't even think I was going to see them again. I was hopeful, but I didn't know. So, because of that, I spend my every waking moment being thankful for being allowed to wake up that next day. I know nothing is promised to us, so I don't take it for granted. I don't take the trees for granted. I don't take the leaves blowing. I don't take the wind touching my face for granted. I don't take cutting grass for granted. All these things to some may seem extremely small, but to me they are gigantic because for 23 years I couldn't think about those things. All I could think about was my survival. And I know some of you may understand what I'm speaking of when I talk about being gone for 23 years. Some of you may not. But for those who know, I have a question. How do you handle being home? This is a conversation I would like to have with people. Because for me, when I first came home, and it's still that way to this very day, but when I first came home, it was a struggle. A real struggle. It was hard for me. I was a difficult person. I didn't know I was being difficult, but I was also running into difficult circumstances that I didn't know how to address or to deal with. I didn't realize until I came home that let me rephrase that. I knew I had changed. I had changed tremendously because when I went away, I was this male in an adult's body. I figured because I had reached a certain age, I had reached a certain level of manhood. The funny thing was, I discovered that I hadn't, because manhood is a developmental process. It's something that you develop into. It's not something that you become merely because you reach a certain age. So I had to learn what it was to be a man. I had to get with other men who could teach me and who were willing to take the time out and have the patience to teach me what it meant to be a man. And when I learned it, I did everything I could to exemplify that behavior. But boy, did I mess up a lot. My daughters will tell you, my daddy did not have a clue, and I didn't. I did not have a clue because when I left the streets in 1993 and returned in 2018, it was still 1993 for me. Everything I remembered was no longer there, or at least not in the form in which I left it. Take my children, for instance. They were little girls when I left. I had 6 daughters. And when I came home, they were adult women. Some with children, some had gotten married, and they had lives that I didn't even understand. I couldn't even relate because I hadn't been there. You see, when I was gone for 23 years, their lives carried on. So there was no gap in that 23-year time span for them other than me being gone. But for me, it was a major gap. So when I came home, it was still 1993 for me. And I was looking for landmarks, things that were familiar to me. But what I realized was nothing was the same, not even me. So I tried to tell them or show them that, hey, I am the man that I've always wanted to be. But what I didn't realize was, although I had taken those steps to become that man, I didn't know how to take the steps needed to address that little boy that had been neglected for so many years. So when we would have conversations, when I would have conversations with my daughters or other people, and I heard something that I had not, or I didn't know how to handle or address, the little boy came out. That male came out because he was always defensive. Because where I was, that's how you survived. We called it being on point. You had to adjust to that environment because that environment was so different from the environment I returned to. See, in there we called it that world, being in that world, and when we returned here, we called this the world, because that was a world in there. And we would always say when we return back to the world, because this world out here was completely different than the world that we were dealing with in there. And in there, I had to reinvent myself, like so many men had to, because I knew I had a lot of time ahead of me that I had to do. And I knew that the only way I was going to be able to do that time and come home in one piece, at least physically, was to adapt. And one of the ways you adapt in there, it's crazy, because to adapt in there means you have to accept that what's abnormal, because many things in there, most all things in there are abnormal. And you have to accept it as normal. So can you imagine the shift, the mind shift you have to go through in order to convince yourself that this abnormal or this abnormal behavior that you're witnessing, that sometimes you're displaying yourself, is actually normal because you need to survive. And I brought a lot of those qualities back home with me. I wasn't even aware of it. You know, it would be brought to my attention because and there you have to learn how to detach yourself. Because if you're not detached from what's going on the outside, that could be a hindrance and a burden to you and cause you much grief. So I had to learn how to detach myself from anything that I loved, anyone that I loved, and I had to let it go. Because in there I had to be focused, hypervigilant even. I had to notice everything because any slip up at any given moment could have cost me my life or someone else's life. And that's not something, when you think about it, when you're looking in retrospect, that you ever wanted to have happened, but it has been known to happen. I want to talk to others who've been similarly situated. And this won't be the first time I take the time out to do this. Because I want to know, how did you deal with your stress? How did you deal with your trauma? How did you deal with your first time out, let me know. My name is Anthony. I'll be talking to you soon. Take care.